You've just entered the Extra Zone Arcade, back in business with another episode of the Mario 40th Anniversary Retrospective, a series where we look back on and review the history of the Super Mario games. Last time, we entered the realm of 3D for the very first time, and it was alright. Super Mario 64 was a game that never lived up to all the hype for me, especially as someone who grew up on games from the following generations. Today's game is one of the ones I grew up on, Super Mario Sunshine for the GameCube. Ah, what a console. So many classics, from Melee to Double Dash to Flushed Away. What? Who put this here? The GameCube has to have one of the strongest lineups for me. Just banger after banger for the 5 or so years that it was supported. But it didn't start that way. The launch lineup was... yeah, that. See, I'm writing the script for this just after the Switch 2's presentation, and despite some pretty glaring and, well, costly issues, the launch lineup is looking to be the strongest Nintendo's ever had, a far cry from the GameCube's initial offering. Although the following months would see some more games released, the console was hurt out the gate by one glaring omission. We did get a Mario, well, Luigi game at the beginning, but it wasn't the follow-up to Super Mario 64 that people were anticipating. Though the game we ended up getting kinda wasn't either, but I'm jumping the gun a bit there. Mario 64 was set to have a direct sequel of sorts that would be released on the 64DD, a disc drive add-on for the Nintendo 64 that released only in Japan. Why was it only released in Japan? Because it was an unmitigated flop, selling only 15,000 copies over its 1-year lifespan. Development on Mario would shift over to Nintendo's new system that was in the works, alongside the turn of the millennium. Famously, a tech demo for the new hardware was shown off that featured 128 Marios running around, and you'll never guess what they called it. This wasn't really an indicator of what the next game would be, more so just a showcase of what Project Dolphin was capable of. Some features of the tech demo would be adapted into another one of Miyamoto's Masterclass series. We'd find out what Nintendo was cooking with Mario in Space World 2001, which would be the last time the event was held. Personally, I think they should bring this back in the form of live on-stage Nintendo Directs. They kind of already do this in the Nintendo New York store, but have a whole venue for it. I don't know, I think it'd be pretty neat. The game was revealed as Super Mario Sunshine, a game where Mario runs around a town with a power washer strapped to his back, set to release in the summer of 2002. You can spot some pretty drastic differences from the final game. For one thing, the layout of this town that would eventually become the Isle Delfino hub area looks entirely different. You can spot a human girl as an NPC, which is very clearly not one of the characters featured in the full release, and there are these giant onion guys rampaging around. Remember when I said the game we would get wasn't the follow-up to Super Mario 64 that people were anticipating? Well, this beta footage is also completely different to that. The game was shown off again at E3 2002, looking pretty much identical to the final version, save for some minor details. Finally, 6 years and 1 month after Super Mario 64 released in Japan, came Super Mario Sunshine. North America would get the game on August 26th of that year, with Europe and Australia getting it in October. They, kinda missed the season with that one, huh? This would actually be the longest gap between 3D Mario releases until now. We're still waiting, by the way. Odyssey is 8 years old, Nintendo. Please, I can't keep playing Luigi's Balloon World. It's still the longest gap between new mainline Mario releases, but only by a hair. Mario Wonder was just 1 week shy of a 6-year wait after Odyssey. If you count Bowser's Fury as its own thing, that's an even shorter gap, so this one's still king. That is, unless the next mainline Mario game, 3D or otherwise, releases in the winter of 2029. Please do not let that happen. So, let's talk about Super Mario Sunshine. My first experience with Super Mario Sunshine was way back in 2012 when I went over to a friend's house to play on the Wii. We played Sonic Colors, Super Smash Bros. Brawl, and some other third game that isn't coming to mind right now. I noticed he had a few GameCube games laying around, this being a console I was familiar with but didn't own. So naturally I asked if he had a GameCube tucked away somewhere, but he only responded by putting a game into the Wii. I thought, ha, you ignorant fool. That game clearly says GameCube on it. There's no way it'll... Well, I'll be damned. That game was Super Mario Sunshine. We played through the opening stage and up until the first encounter with Shadow Mario, before his mum called us into the kitchen for some s'mores. I distinctly remember when we got to the scene where Mario was arrested. We kept frantically passing the controller back and forth to shift blame for the plumber's incarceration. Weirdly enough, I don't remember which one of us was actually even playing up to that point. It was at that point that I decided I wanted to play the game for myself. And given how cheap a GameCube and a copy of the game was at the time, that was a pretty easy Christmas present that year. We couldn't afford much, let alone new consoles like the Wii U or 3DS just yet, so this would do for now. I got that along with both Sonic Adventure games, Mega Collection and Sonic Heroes. Whole lot of blue that year. I didn't touch the game for a little while though. probably not until the following February. I remember at least playing up to the point where the island gets flooded and quitting on the final level because I just could not beat it. There was plenty of frustration before that too, so I honestly didn't like the game that much. Still, the summer vibe was always the big appeal of this one to me as a certified summer enjoyer. Even now, the aesthetic of this game remains to be my favourite part of the experience, and in my opinion, one of the strongest in the entire franchise. I think it holds up really well today. I would occasionally dip back into the game over the years to screw around in Isle Delfino, at least until my GameCube broke. RIP to that original GameCube, there were a lot of fun memories made with you. I would get another one in the summer of 2018, along with a copy of Sunshine thanks to my girlfriend, longtime channel supporter and moderator, Emma. What do you think of Super Mario Sunshine, Emma?
Worst game I've ever played. Do not play it.
Well, she certainly knows how to get to the point better than I do. Thank you for being the first and most likely only guest on this series. Though I wouldn't actually play through this copy until, you guessed it, 2020, when I replayed all the mainline Mario games in a row. You can bet in that particular year, finally overcoming a level named Corona Mountain carried some kind of symbolism for me. I think after this playthrough, I low-key hated it. I don't remember having much fun at all, and this was just coming off of 64, a game I also really didn't like at that point. Though this was more a result of the game itself feeling really unpolished and having some pretty abysmal missions. We'll talk about those later. I'd play the game again in my Mariothon livestream series from 2023. This was the verdict. I like this game more than Mario 64. I think it's better. This replay again, I feel like has definitely helped to give me a new perspective on this game. A little bit, you know. There's definitely a lot of bad moments, there's definitely a lot of jank, but I think like the controls are better, the movement is better, some of the level gimmicks are actually quite fun. Boss fights are okay, but overall, like, I don't know, like, when I was younger, I kind of like didn't like this game. I've replayed it every now and again over the years, and like, you know, yeah, this game has its crappy moments, but like, it's fun. Like, I think it's a good game. Like, it's good. I found that the game still felt janky and had some very annoying sections, but surprisingly, I actually had a fun time. I even liked it more than 64 after this. So probably my biggest turnaround on any of these games so far. But it seems like my opinion has swayed in different directions over the 13 years since I first played it. Is it possible that that's happened again? Especially since this time I decided to go for the dreaded 100%. Starting this game up, we're greeted with a fully animated opening cutscene for the very first time in the series. Mario, Princess Peach, Toadsworth in his first ever appearance, and some other Toads are on a plane headed to the relaxing Isle Delfino for a vacation. This is already a bad sign, knowing how vacations to a faraway land have typically gone down in this series. We also have voice acting for the first and really only time. This is probably for the best because, yikes.
Nice work, Mario. Quite an unusual device. Is it some sort of pump?
I am Flood, glad to meet you. Someone's coming.
While watching an introductory video on their flight, Peach notices a strange shadowy figure hopping around in the background. The boys are a little too enthralled by the island's hospitality to notice it, and before long, they land at their destination. Only problem is, it's covered in this icky paint-like goop that's moving. Peach notices the shadowy menace again, with the others still none the wiser. I don't know how this guy is getting away with aura farming like this with no one seeing him. After all, as we'll come to find out, there's literally a public manhunt for this criminal, so you'd think folks would be keeping an eye out for him. Mario comes across a curious device called Flood, the Flash Liquidizer Ultra Dowsing device. He's a product of GAD Science Incorporated. That's right, the very same GAD that created the Poltergust back in Luigi's Mansion. Holy shit, we have actual lore and continuity! Flood even shows little flashbacks to Mario 1, World, and 64 as his identifying Mario, which means those games are at least canon to this one. Don't get used to any of that though. After using Flood's water spraying capabilities to deal with a rather artistic threat, Mario is apprehended by the local Pianta police force and sent to court. He's given a blatantly unfair trial that breaches due process at pretty much every turn. I mean seriously, Mario wasn't even appointed a real attorney. We got Peach over here thinking she's Phoenix Wright talking about OBJECTION! And Mario is like, Helena, look at my lawyer dog, I'm going to jail! And that he does, along with us getting a lore dump about how the graffiti has caused the island to recede into darkness. The vandalism of the Shine Gate caused the Shine sprites to disperse, which could put the lives of the island's residents in jeopardy. So, Mario is released from prison under the condition that he can't leave the island until it's all cleaned up. Wouldn't be the worst thing to be trapped doing community service on a tropical island paradise. It's not just the island he'll be clearing, but also his good name as he tracks down his shadowy lookalike, who is the real culprit. it's revealed that this is actually Bowser Jr. in disguise. That's right, Bowser has an actual son who he's somehow convinced that this human woman gave birth to. This is kinda fucked up on multiple levels. Anyway, Junior thinks that Mario is actually the kidnapper here and is keeping his mother away from him. So of course, he kidnaps her. You know, she had plenty of time to just get out of there, but instead got lost in thought trying to contemplate how turtle-human reproduction would even work. So, now we gotta rescue the princess because it's a Mario game, and what else are we really here for? With the island either mostly or entirely cleared of the toxic paint, which was done using a brush also created by Gad Signs Inc., we head into the Corona Mountain to confront the Koopa clan. They're chilling in this pool of what I can only describe as boiling hot Mountain Dew when Mario pulls up to scrap. The voice acting in this particular cutscene really is something else, man. It sounds so much like a bad anime dub from the 80s and I kinda love it. But I can also point directly to this scene anytime anyone asks me why these characters rarely speak full sentences.
You again? Don't you ever give up?
Mario! How dare you disturb my family vacation?
Mario flips the tub and the island's shine is fully restored, but at a cost. Flood sustains some pretty heavy damage during the fight, and breaks down after all is said and done. This scene is actually pretty sad, even if the animation isn't doing much for it. But it's okay, because he's fixed up in the very next scene, only for him to never appear in the series again. If I had a nickel for every time Nintendo gave Mario a new companion that would have zero relevance outside of that one game in Super Smash Bros., I would have 2 nickels. Which isn't a lot, but damn it's weird that it happened twice. Meanwhile, Bowser reveals to Junior that Peach isn't really his mom. Apparently he already knew that, but nonetheless, he's enthusiastic about taking Mario on again, which will happen many times in the near future. Mario and the gang get to fully enjoy their vacation in peace, and that wraps up probably the longest story segment in any of these episodes. Well, maybe barring Galaxy, depending on how much lore we look at. See, this is the only game in the series to actually have fully voiced and animated cutscenes that tell the story throughout. They are pretty basic with bad voice acting and subpar animations, but the attempt was appreciated. As many jokes as I've made at its expense, I would like to see another honest-to-God attempt at this sometime. Now, it's about time we get into that gameplay, isn't it? And oh boy, this is sure to be one of the most interesting to talk about, at least of the 3D games. We'll start with Mario's base moveset, which has been stripped back pretty drastically. No one's really crying over the dive, kick, breakdance, sweep, punch combo and crawl being gone, but the omission of the long jump definitely hit hard. Flood makes up for it mostly, but it would have been nice to have it in these moments where you're separated. Other than that, you still have the triple jump, side flip, wall jump, ground pound, dive, and kinda the backflip at your disposal. That's more than enough to deal with everything the game throws at you. Mario can now also do the spin jump on command by moving the stick in a circle and jumping. He also glides down slightly after doing it, which makes some platforming sections less stressful. I said you kinda have the backflip since this can only be done with Flood by going into strafe mode and hitting the spray button while jumping and holding back. This is the only Mario move, trademark, that actually requires the water pack. Though the slide can be used without Flood, it's much better with him. You could just spam it and watch as Mario shoots forward with the form of a dolphin, but spraying the ground first before a dive will make a slip and slide with crazy momentum. This is a lot of fun to use, and a great way to get up to speed as you head over to whatever your objective is. Flood enhances the gameplay in a few more ways, and there are a lot of different functions to boot. You have your regular spray mode where Mario stands in place as you aim your shot, but you can also run and gun if you're more mobile. This is one of the best uses of the GameCube's adaptive triggers out there, which is why it baffles me how badly they fumbled it in 3D All-Stars. But we're just not going to talk about that collection for the sake of not wanting to crash out. You can tap the trigger in to do a spread shot, which tends to be my go-to method for taking down bosses. It doesn't do as much direct damage, but it requires a lot less precision, which is always a plus for me. Cleaning and combat capabilities are great, but how does he help with platforming? Introducing the hover nozzle. Switch to this nifty modification with the X button and press the trigger to glide over large gaps. Regular jumps just not reaching those platforms? Hover over to it. Overshot a jump? Hover back towards it and correct that mistake. I rely on this thing pretty heavily when I'm playing this game, which is what makes those secret courses where Flood is taken away all the more painful. Not helping is the controls. They're definitely improved from 64, but there are a few new issues that rear their ugly heads. Mario could feel a bit sluggish and hard to turn in that game, and that problem has been fixed, but maybe a little too much. Mario shoots off into top speed almost instantly, which if you remember in the Super Mario Bros. 2 episode, is a recipe for disaster. Tapping the control stick even slightly in a direction will have Mario pretty much snap into that position. It can feel really jarring and comes across like a bit of an overcorrection. This makes precise platforming, well, very imprecise. It adds to that overall feeling that there's less polish this time around. I mean, Mario's movement looks and feels pretty janky here. The snappier and more responsive control does give this game the edge over 64 for me though, and like that game, can feel really good when you get into a flow state. Too bad the design doesn't really allow for that too often, with a lot of segments featuring stop and go water blasting to progress. Not that it isn't fun spraying down goop, but sometimes you just want to get to your objective in your own way. And that's actually something 64 does better. See, this game's mission structure has been streamlined, so now you can't get your MacGuffins in any order. Yeah, you can't skip any missions or worlds that you don't like, although there are less of both in general. In fact, this game only has half the number of worlds that 64 does. Those worlds are also a little more linearly designed, with the paths you can take usually corresponding to the specific mission you're in. It does allow mechanics to be more properly conveyed to the player, but it also removes a lot of that player expression that 64 is known for. But man, if the level design isn't as expressive as 64, the aesthetics certainly blow that game out the water. I mean, god damn, this game is pretty, even now. One thing I especially love about this game that they started to do in this era was actually have everything be interconnected. At various points in the game, you could look out into the horizon and see one of the other worlds in the background. They really make you feel like you're on an island getaway full of tourist traps. The graphical leap here was just insane too. I mean, looking at these side by side really says it all. We'll likely never see a leap in visuals like this ever again, and this will happen in a 6-year time frame. I mean, it's 2025, and do games really look that much better than they did in 2019? Technology has come so far that it's going to be diminishing returns for the foreseeable. What hasn't diminished is the mission variety here. You'll be doing so many different tasks in this game, like freeing villagers from burning hot paint, navigating a haunted maze-like attic, collecting red coins on the back of a bird made of sand cubes. Actually, that one sucked. Ooh, how about this one where you need to bring a watermelon over to a smoothie shack and even the slightest touch of another object will cause it to explode? Yeah, that one's arse. But what about this secret stage where these guys called chucksters throw you onto increasingly smaller platforms, but you end up being thrown at whatever angle you talk to these guys at, which means you will likely be thrown into the void because you dared to start a conversation just a little too far to the right? Okay, you get the point. There are a lot of just straight up dogshit missions in this game, and I mean worse than anything 64 had to offer. The worst missions in this game by far have to be two of the ones found in Delfino Plaza. There's this lily pad ride you have to do over poison water while collecting red coins. The lily pad will dissolve over time, so you need to be quick and accurate. Two things that are nearly impossible to do just using Flood's Blast to maneuver. I find the best strat is just to collect as many as you can in one run, and if you miss any, use the borders to walk back to the start. The lily pad respawns every time, so just ride it again to grab what you missed. You'll probably die a handful of times, but it is doable. The fucking pachinko machine, on the other hand, is basically down to complete luck. This is the worst mission in the game by a landslide. The game's awkward physics and controls are at their absolute worst here as you constantly fly way too fast over everything. Using the hover nozzle to correct yourself is barely even an option here, and the pegs have some awkward properties that often cause Mario to get stuck on them. Collecting the red coins under these conditions is incredibly difficult, and if you fall out the board, which you 100% will, you'll be doing it all over again. I got stuck here for an hour to maybe an hour and a half. I am not joking when I say at the time of writing this is the hardest thing I've had to do in the entire series. Yes, harder than anything Lost Levels threw at me. But trust and believe this was not the only obstacle that had me questioning whether or not I'd even bother with the completionist run in this game. We'll get to that. For now, let's talk about some missions I liked. Scrubbing Sirena Beach was a fun one that zeroed in on the cleaning aspect of the game. It's a good time challenge with an electrical hazard to avoid, and different methods of completion. The Cage Sign Sprite in Rico Harbor was a fun one as well, just pure platforming goodness. This mission also has quite a few ways to get around and skip sections with a well-timed hover jump. As for a mission I didn't like but then grew to love, look no further than the Runaway Ferris Wheel in Pinner Park. Normally you'd have to go around the back of the park and make your way up this obnoxious climbing course. Clever use of flood and good positioning can get you to the top of the Ferris wheel without so much as even thinking about that climbing part. This is how I tackle this one whenever I play through it, no exceptions. 100 coin missions are back and still not all that fun, with them being in every world and some with very small margins of error. Then every 7th mission in a world will have you chasing and spraying down Shadow Mario. He'll also show up in the hub world sometimes, carrying various items. Douse him in H2O and he'll drop the goods, 2 of which are additional nozzles for flood. The first of these is the rocket nozzle, which shoots Mario straight up once charged. Obviously this is useful for reaching higher places and harder to reach collectibles. The other is the turbo nozzle, which when charged will boost Mario's running speed dramatically. It's probably the one that's used the least throughout the game, but there is one fun secret course where you get to do some high-speed platforming. Though, just like the caps in 64, these are situational power-ups that the game isn't entirely designed around. I don't necessarily hate that, but I do think power-ups are an important part of Mario's gameplay, and it sucks to see once again that they're still not bringing out their potential in 3D. It'll be some time before that happens. The nozzle you grab also replaces the hover, and I find that a bit limiting. It would have been way better if you had the 2 standard nozzles and then one of the additional ones that you can switch to. One of the other things Shadow Mario will drop is a Yoshi egg. Yep, Yoshi is back to being mountable and he kinda sucks. Why the hell is he allergic to water? He could swim just fine in Mario World. Maybe the Yoshi native to Isle Delfino specifically have this quirk? If so, they definitely drew the short stick on the evolutionary scale because this place is like 80% water. Except apparently the Yoshi in this game were all created by Bowser Jr. using the brush? I'm only just finding this out now and suddenly it all makes sense. Anyway, he can eat enemies and objects, allowing Mario to pass through when he otherwise couldn't. He can also use his signature flutter jump from Yoshi's Island for the first time in 3D, as well as regurgitate his stomach juices. Nasty. But before you can even hop on the guy, you gotta bring the right fruit to his egg so he'll hatch. With only a handful of missions that are actually pretty fun, it's clear he wasn't a focus and likely added later in development. In other words, it's nice that he's here, but it really doesn't add or take anything from the experience, and I even forget about his inclusion from time to time. It doesn't help this game's case that one of the later 3D titles has much better Yoshi implementation. I gotta give this game its flowers for the boss selection though. Like 64, there's good variety here, even if taking these guys down is often pretty simple. These proto-piranhas are the ones you'll fight the most, usually showing up as a kind of mini-boss. Wait for them to open up while avoiding the goobles that come at you, then fire away. Water away. Whatever works. Monty Mole has been promoted to a mini-boss as well, showing up in a couple of missions to throw bombs and shoot bullet bills at you. Stomp the bombs then throw them back at him for some fireworks. Peter Piranha is another recurring boss and probably one of the more memorable ones, since he'd actually show up in a handful of games past this. In the first fight, you pump him full of water and ground pound his full belly. In the second, you do the same, but with the added challenge of knocking him out the air. I'm honestly still not sure exactly how you do that, but usually spraying in his general direction does the trick. Gooper Blooper is here to cause a mess, and the best way to deal with him is to violently rip off his tentacles. The way they flop around frantically after is probably one of the most gruesome things in the entire Mario series. Once those are out the way, grab hold of his siphon and pull back to send him packing. Wiggler's back and looking a lot greener, but don't be fooled. He's even more pissed off than the last time we interrupted his sleep back in 64. Sprouting up these Doom Buds with the right timing will cause him to flip, interrupting the rampage and opening up a weak spot to ground pound. Mecha Bowser is exactly what it says on the tin. This big Robo Koopa shoots bullet bills from his chest, which suspiciously looks like the 4 GameCube controller ports on the front of the console. Grab and shoot these rockets with Flood to knock down the Iron Titan. For the first time in a mainline Mario game, we fight King Boo. Remember, the guy we fight in World in 64 is Big Boo. Totally different. Although this guy looks nothing like the King Boo from Luigi's Mansion. Or the one that would show up throughout the series after this. Guess the Kings of the Dead never stay in power for long. Anyway, he'll spin a slot machine that produces either enemies or fruit. If it lands on fruit, a hot chili pepper will appear that you'll need to lob at his big old tongue. He clearly can't handle the heat. Then we have Eely-Mouth, who's just in need of some quick dental procedure. And lastly, is Bowser and his son at the peak of Corona Mountain. Just getting to them is tough. Like I said earlier, this level would be a wall I just couldn't pass as a kid. Even now I still get my ass kicked because of that boat section. The controls for it make absolutely no sense, and I still don't think I properly understand it after all this time. You'd think spraying in one direction would send you the opposite way, but it doesn't. Most of the time. And if you even slightly graze one of the stalagmites, Mario's as good as cooked. The first section isn't a walk in the park either, with the insta-kill spike platforms and fire that require good timing to get past. The final section is super easy though, just rocket up past the clouds and boom, you're there. Once in the fight, bullet bills are rained down on you as Bowser attempts to fry you with his fire breath. Rocket up and ground pound on these 5 points to flip the tub and cancel Bowser's holiday plans. The fight isn't too difficult, but getting back up after you destroy a section can be tough, especially with the surprisingly painful bathwater flying at you as you do it. And that's the game. You beat Bowser and you can enjoy your vacation. You earned it. Except, not really. Because to get 100% completion, you'll need to do some hunting. You know what time it is. Blue coins. I'm sure you've heard the horror stories about these things if you know anything about this game, and it is no exaggeration. For one thing, these blue coins are in some super obscure and sometimes hard to reach locations. With 30 of them in each course, you're going to be doing a lot of scouring, and by that I mean pretty much spraying anything and everything with water. Like, some of these will have you spraying the most random, inconspicuous spots, and all I can think is how the hell you would find these without a guide. Getting them is also a pretty slow process, since not all blue coins are available in a given mission. Then every time you collect one, you get the option to save. It might not seem like much, but that time adds up. There are also some that might require a particular nozzle or Yoshi to get, so there are a handful of early game ones you just straight up can't get till much later. To add insult to injury, I got all the blue coins before I confronted Bowser and exchanged them for the last of the 120 shine sprites. I beat the game and then got a save error, so I had to go back and get the 10 blue coins in Corona Mountain again. These ones in particular were already the hardest in the game, and now I had to do it again. This genuinely had me on the brink of just quitting the 100%, but against my better judgment, I did it again, and it actually saved this time. By the way, didn't the whole plot of this game revolve around the fact that the shine sprites being missing could make life on Isle Delfino miserable? So what the hell is up with these Tanuki who are just straight up selling them in exchange for blue coins? They know they're on some shady shit too, just look at the way they talk about the shine sprites. Anyway, yeah, the hunt isn't all that much fun. I think if it took advantage of your moveset more, or they rewarded you more through the challenges, it'd be more satisfying to collect them. As it stands, they do that thing I hate in games where the collectibles basically just become a checklist of random tasks you wouldn't otherwise think to do. It doesn't help that your reward for getting all the shines is pretty lame as well. All you get is a postcard saying "have a relaxing vacation" as if the game didn't just waste my time, and a Hawaiian shirt for Mario. The shirt is pretty baller though, I can't lie. Still, it feels pretty underwhelming compared to 64 and World's 100% rewards. I know it's about the journey and not the destination, but the journey has its problems. For every fun and ingeniously designed section of this game, there's something equally baffling and frustrating. The visuals, music, and presentation are genuinely so amazing though that I honestly can't stay mad at it. Do some of those awful missions piss me off beyond belief? Absolutely. Do the glitches that are way too easy to encounter lessen the experience? Yeah, they definitely do. But as crazy as it sounds, I would actually rather come back to this game than 64. Not for the 100% experience, hell no, but just for a casual playthrough. Now, I'm perfectly willing to admit that there might be some nostalgia there. Even though I didn't like the game much as a kid, it's still a game I have plenty of memories with and a lot of fondness. This game can be a pretty unpolished mess of ideas, but when it works, this is some of my favorite 3D Mario gameplay out there. This game is kinda divisive amongst the online community. Seems to be one of those love it or hate it kinda titles. It reviewed pretty much as well as 64 did on release, but time hasn't been as kind to this one compared to its older brother. I think this is an example of how the narrative has been controlled by the older generation though. I've been seeing way more folks come out about how they love this game. People like me who grew up with it. As easy as it is to pick this game apart, there's just as much to appreciate, which is what makes it so polarizing. The game would go on to be the third best-selling GameCube game at 5.91 million copies sold. Yeah, Nintendo's downward trend continued in the GameCube era to the point where Nintendo actually considered it a commercial failure. This is a big contributing factor as to why up until recently, they've seemingly tried to act like it never existed. And it sucks because I love this console. It's one of my favorites of all time, with an iconic library and one of the best controllers ever conceived. Seriously, there's a reason why this thing has been supported in some way on every system since. One thing I found out while researching is that the GameCube has the highest attach rate of any Nintendo console. That means that proportional to the number of consoles sold, the most games were bought by users. So the fewer people that had a GameCube loved it, and it's easy to see why. But it was lagging so far behind the competition, especially the juggernaut that was the PS2, and falling behind previous Nintendo generations awoke something in the company. They were going to take a drastically different direction in the next generation, focusing on a gimmick rather than horsepower. It was going to be a revolution. That won't be next time's story, but trust that it will be told. Stay tuned.
The world a special place. Cherish life and never waste.
Everyone loves a sunshiny day. We're gonna keep it that way.
Cause clean is better than dirty, and dirty's meaner than clean.
Let's all lend a helping hand. Mario can't do it alone. He'll spray his water to fly around and clean the sludge that's on the ground.
Cause clean is better than dirty, and dirty's meaner than clean.
Super Mario Sunshine, only for Nintendo GameCube. Rated E for everyone.
Well, what did you think? The longest episode of the Mario 40th Anniversary Superspective comes to a close. I reckon the next one won't be as lengthy, but I just had a ton to say about this game. For all my issues with it, this is a game that's very personal to me. But how do you feel about it? Let me know in the comments, I'd love to hear your takes. Make sure to drop a like, share with your friends, and spray down that subscribe button so you don't miss any episodes of this series. Next time, we're back to 2 dimensions, on 2 screens. See you there.